What did you do? Pervert. Molester. She cried out, beginning to sob as she turned away from me, trying to cover her exposed chest. I tried to explain that I was only administering first aid after she passed out, but she wouldn't listen. By the time the ambulance arrived and took her to the hospital, she was glaring at me with red eyes, threatening, "I'll tell my dad what you did." I watched the ambulance drive away in a daze. Suddenly, I remembered I had a job interview lined up next. In a panic, I checked the time, only to find I had already missed the appointment. Because I stopped to help a woman who had collapsed on the sidewalk, I ended up missing the interview. Yet, it was then that I found a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos. My name is Mark, and I'm currently on the job hunt. Today was supposed to be the interview with Eagle Travel, a travel agency. Although my last job was at a trading company, unrelated to travel, I cherished every moment I got to explore the world for work, visiting tourist spots and local favorites, and connecting with the locals. I wanted a job that could harness that experience. Eagle Travel might be small, but their slogan, "Witness breathtaking views in your lifetime," really resonated with me, and their reputation among users was solid. I saw potential for growth and wanted to be part of it. As I left the station, I noticed the pedestrian signal in front of me starting to blink blue, signaling it was safe to cross. I had arrived 30 minutes early for my interview, so there was no need to rush. "It's all right." Calming my nervously hastening steps, I waited for the signal to turn green. Just as I was calming my nerves, a man in a suit dashed by, ignoring that the pedestrian light had turned red and cars had started to move. In a heartbeat, he was hit. A woman's scream cut through the air as the driver rushed to the man's aid, yelling for someone to call an ambulance. I dialed 911 immediately, while a woman nearby, who identified herself as a nurse, ran to assist the injured man. Relieved that someone with clear instructions was present, my anxiety lessened momentarily. Then, from behind, I heard the sound of something large hitting the ground. Turning around, I saw a woman felled on a sidewalk, her sunflower patterned skirt glaringly bright. But now was not the time for such thoughts. The people around murmured, "What's happening?" Yet, with furrowed brows, none approached her. Some even walked away, leaving her behind. Pushing through the crowd, I rushed to her side to check her breathing. Negative. No pulse. "Excuse me, you, the woman with pink hair. Could you run to that institution and get an AED?" Me. "Got it." A girl who seemed to be a college student sprinted off as if shot from a cannon. While waiting, I moved the collapsed woman to a safer spot on the sidewalk and began administering chest compressions. This was my first time performing first aid in a real-life situation. I had only practiced a few times during training sessions, where I was told it was okay to break bones if necessary. Just push hard. Doubtful but committed, I followed those instructions. As I did, the woman with pink hair returned. I checked the collapsed woman's breathing and pulse once more, but still, there was no sign of life. "I'm going to use the AED. Please step back." As I instructed, a girl who brought the AED hopped away. It seemed as if everyone else decided it was none of their business anymore, leaving us alone. I opened the AED and turned it on, following the voice prompts to take out the electrode pads. I hesitated for a moment when it came to attaching the pads to her body. "Excuse me, could you help me place these electrode pads on her?" I asked the pink-haired woman who was still around, but she shook her head vigorously, saying, "No way, I can't." There was no time for hesitation. Every second mattered. I remembered hearing that it wasn't necessary to remove all the clothing, just to make sure the pads made contact with the skin. I unbuttoned her light green blouse just enough to place a pad above her right chest. That's when I noticed a large scar across her chest, possibly from an accident. Realizing I had paused, I shook my head and quickly resumed the procedure, placing the other pad below her left chest. The AED determined a shock was needed, so I pressed the button. After the shock, I was instructed to continue chest compressions, which I did until she started groaning and coughing. Relieved, I collapsed on the spot, overwhelmed with relief. As she came to, wincing and opening her eyes, she noticed her blouse was undone and screamed, quickly covering herself with her blouse. Then she glared at me. "What did you do? Pervert. Molester." I was just, you passed out. Don't look at me, she cried out, turning away and quickly buttoning up her blouse. She attempted to stand but seemed dizzy and started to fall. Instinctively, I reached out to support her, but she slapped me across the face. Don't touch me. Just then, the ambulance arrived for the man who had been hit by a car. Over here. This girl collapsed too and just woke up. The woman who had brought the AED called out to the paramedics. One of the paramedics came over, noticing the AED spread out on the ground. You should come with us too. Just to be safe, let's get you checked out. The woman nodded quietly, then glared at me with red eyes. Remember this, I'm telling my dad on you. I watched, stunned, as she got into the ambulance. Suddenly, I remembered my job interview. Frantically checking the time, I realized I had missed the appointment long ago. Rushing to Eagle Travel's building, I was turned away with a curt, being late is unacceptable. It goes without saying that a rejection notice from Eagle Travel arrived at my place later on. A few days after receiving the rejection notice from Eagle Travel, I gathered my spirits and continued my job search. There's no use crying over spilled milk. Moving on and switching gears is crucial. Today, I had no interviews lined up, so I decided to visit the employment office for job search advice and left my apartment. That's when a sleek, obviously expensive black car quietly stopped in front of my modest apartment, seeming completely out of place in this neighborhood of affordable rents. A wealthy relative among the tenants. I hadn't heard such stories. As I puzzled over this, a man stepped out of the car, and I recognized him immediately. He was the CEO of Eagle Travel, a face I'd seen countless times on their website. Then, a woman alighted from the car, and I was in for another shock. She was wearing a yellow cardigan, the same woman I had saved on the day of my Eagle Travel interview. Coming from the same car. Considering she arrived in the same car, does that mean she could be an employee of Eagle Travel? As I stared at them, our eyes met. Ah, Dad, that's him, the woman said, awkwardly diverting her gaze and tugging at the CEO's sleeve. You're Helen's savior, exclaimed the CEO, rushing over with open arms and shaking my hand vigorously. I was dumbfounded as he produced a business card from his jacket pocket. I'm Kyle, CEO of Eagle Travel. I heard you saved my daughter when she was in danger. Thank you, truly, he said. Helen, standing behind him, bit her lip and thanked as well. I'm sorry for the commotion that day, calling you a pervert and all, without thanking you. The paramedics scolded me when I told them in the ambulance. If it weren't for your help, I might not have woken up, Helen said, looking up at me with genuine remorse in her eyes. I'm glad we understand each other now. And thank you for coming all this way to apologize, I replied. It's the least I can do for my daughter's lifesaver. Plus, I have something to ask you. You had an interview with my company that day, didn't you? Yes. Are you still job hunting, or have you found a position? I'm still looking. That's fortunate for us. Mark, if you're willing, I'd like you to join our company. What? Shocked, it felt as if a previously closed path had suddenly opened up. I heard that while some just walked by, you didn't hesitate to help Helen. We need someone with your sense of justice and calmness in handling situations. Would you consider joining us? I'd also like to ask you. It's because of me you were late for the interview, Helen added. I heartily agreed. I've always wanted to work at your company. I'd be honored to join. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. We're counting on you, Kyle said, shaking my hand firmly. Helen sighed with relief beside us. And so, I started my new job at Eagle Travel. A month in, as I was about to take the elevator to the office, Helen smoothly joined me. Good morning, I greeted. Good morning, Mark, she replied. As the elevator silently closed its doors and began to ascend, I found myself alone with Helen, feeling a tension in the air. Since joining the company, I had been assigned to the department she manages. So our destination was the same. Desperately searching my mind for some conversation starter, Helen kindly initiated a dialogue. Mark, you've quickly made a name for yourself in the department, she began. The overseas travel plan, which had been stagnant for a while, has really picked up pace since you took over. It's significant because we lack someone with a strong understanding of international matters and languages. I'm glad my previous job is proving useful. I believe if we can tap into the market of visitors coming here from abroad, our sales are bound to increase even more. You're a big help," Helen said with a smile that made my heart skip a beat. She was as charming as a sunflower, her demeanor bright and cheerful, making the atmosphere around her instantly light up. She seemed entirely different from when we first met. Caught gazing at her, I was snapped back to reality as the elevator doors opened. I wished for more time to talk, but it seemed Helen was not on the same wavelength. Promptly stepping out. "Good morning, Helen." Mall colleagues quickly approached to greet her, eager to exchange a morning salutation. Helen returned their greetings with a cheerful good morning, while the men celebrated being able to greet her in their mind, then began preparing for their external appointments. After checking my emails, I decided to follow suit and start my day. A female colleague stretched lazily beside me. Another day of external visits. I'm not really into traveling, you know. I'm terrible at putting together plans since I don't get the appeal of ins or know the best spots around them. Hey, Mark, why don't you go in my place? Hold it right there. Don't dump your work on the coworkers. Helen's admonishing voice cut through. The colleague pouted in response. Come on. It's all about putting the right person in the right job. Mark is so capable. He'll definitely come up with plans that satisfy the ends more than I ever could, she reasoned. If you keep passing everything to Mark, he'll burn out, you know, Helen retorted, glancing over at me. I couldn't help but look at Helen, who was now giving the colleague a stern look. The colleague, clearly displeased, stood up from her chair with a huff. Fine, I'll handle it. Must be nice being the manager, just sticking to indoor duties. Noticing Helen avert her gaze at the comment, I look at the pouted colleague. I realized some employees, like this person, were discontent with Helen not doing field work. Despite the general understanding that she should remain in the office for emergencies, Helen had rarely, if ever, gone on site visits or inspections. Kate, we need someone in the office for emergencies. Isn't that why the manager stays behind? I suggested. Well, you have a point there. After sighing, the colleague apologized to Helen for overstepping. I'm sorry, I said too much, and then left the office. I realized I needed to leave soon too, or I'd be late for my appointment. I shut down my computer and grabbed my bag. Thank you, Mark, Helen said, her expression downcast. It was nothing really. I'm off then, I replied, offering a smile, hoping to lift her spirits a bit before I left. Feeling a tug at my heartstrings seeing her so dejected. The plan for next week is to visit the Hotel Spring Rain for a tour plan inspection. It's a couple's plan, so it needs a man and a woman. Mark, you'll go with me, Helen announced, causing a stir in the office, especially among the male staff. Lucky Mark, going to the resort hotel with Helen, they envied. You are inspecting a couple's plan, which means you'll be acting as a couple, right? Getting to pretend Helen is your girlfriend, even just for work, is too much of a perk. While they expressed their envy and encouragement, saying, do your best, and don't make a move, I felt reassured by the kindness of everyone at the company. But why Mark? He's the newest guy here. One pondered aloud. Are you kidding? Have you seen how capable he is? Another defended. True, but it's rare for Helen to do field work. Is this her first time? Indeed. As they returned to their desks, I couldn't help but wonder. It was my first time on field work, and Helen chose me, the newest recruit, for a couple's plan inspection. Did she feel comfortable pretending to be in a relationship with me? Could she possibly like me? Lost in these fluffy daydreams, I made a mistake in my data entry but quickly corrected it. I had to focus, reminding myself of the importance of the upcoming task. Before I knew it, the day to visit the hotel arrived. Considering the typical high usage on weekends, we planned our stay accordingly. Most guests would drive to Spring Rain, so we decided on car travel, with me driving. Helen, usually so bright and cheerful, was unusually quiet and tense during the ride, her lips pressed firmly together, her complexion a shade paler than usual. Are you okay? Did you get carsick? I asked, concerned, despite having driven as carefully as I could. She shook her head. I'm fine. You're a good driver, Mark. Thank you, I responded, a little relieved. Then, hesitantly, she added, could I hold your hand for a bit? Hold as in, I asked, puzzled. Not your hand, but your clothes or something. Just for a bit. Sure, I replied with a smile and a quick glance at Helen. She sighed in relief and gingerly pinched the hem of my shirt. Her expression seemed to soften a bit. But just moments ago, Helen had almost said hand. Did she actually want to hold my hand? Does that mean she might actually like me? Could this be her way of trying to close the distance between us? As I entertained these thoughts, my heart began to race. This isn't good. I need to stay focused on driving. Yet, once the idea took hold, even the sensation of my shirt being pinched became distracting. Despite not being direct skin contact, battling the sweet tension, I managed to safely arrive at the Hotel Spring Rain. The general manager led us to a room prepared for the tour. Naturally a king-size bedroom for couples. Though I knew it, the reality of being alone with Helen suddenly felt daunting. Glancing at Helen, she seemed unfazed, her eyes sparkling as she exclaimed, "Wow, what a lovely room. This room comes with a private jacuzzi deck adjacent to the room. We'll serve dinner here so you two can enjoy it privately. Additionally, this room is situated away from other guests, so you need not worry about disturbing anyone," the GM said with a meaningful smile, making my heart skip a beat. "Well, we're just here for inspection," I said, trying to hide my flushing face. "We'll bring dinner around 7 p.m., she said before leaving us alone in the room. The silence was so profound, we could hear the wind brushing through the trees, enveloping Helen and me. "All right, then. Shall we enjoy the jacuzzi right away?" As Helen began to undress, I panicked and quickly turned away. "Please don't suddenly strip here. Use the changing room," I protested. But the sound of fabric rustling continued unabated. She was undressing. My heart raced as if it would burst. "Mark, hurry up and undress too. We can fully experience the couple's plan unless we go in together." Helen's voice reached me from behind, but I was rooted to the spot. "Mark." She tugged at my arm forcefully, and caught off guard by her pull, I inadvertently turned towards her. But instead of being naked, she was clad in a swimsuit, a tank top and shorts. Relieved, yet somehow slightly disappointed, my eyes unavoidably drifted to the large scar across her chest. I had seen the day I helped her. Aware of her scar, Helen looked up at me tensely, her grip on my arm tightening. I met her gaze once more. "You're wearing a swimsuit underneath. You could have mentioned that sooner. I didn't bring mine, so please go ahead. I'll join you after I change," I told her. She looked at me quietly before letting go of my arm. "Then, I'll go ahead," she said. I closed the door to the outdoor jacuzzi deck behind her. Then, I took a swimsuit from my bag to change into, and headed towards the jacuzzi deck myself, walking carefully to avoid slipping. Joining Helen, who was already enjoying the jacuzzi, though the tub size is just fit for 2 persons, so I made sure to keep myself at the corner to avoid unintentionally touching her. The rustling of the trees and the babbling of a nearby stream started to soothe my nerves a bit, the warm water loosening up my tensed heart. "It's a beautiful view," fits our company's slogan. Witness breathtaking views in your lifetime, perfectly. But limiting this to couples seems a bit wasteful. Maybe we should consider including families too. It would appeal not just to couples seeking relaxation, but also to families with children who wouldn't have to worry about them making noise, I mused. There was no response. Finding it odd, I glanced at Helen to see her touching the scar on her chest. I hesitated, wondering whether to address it. "Why did you decide to bring me for the inspection?" "I'm just a newcomer," I asked, skirting around the topic of her scar, something that had been on my mind since being chosen. She lifted her gaze slightly. "I thought it would be okay with you, Mark. I'm aware of the goodwill I receive from others. If you were with someone you liked in this situation, you might not be able to hold back, right?" While she spoke as if understanding others' affections, it seemed she hadn't noticed my feelings. Disheartened, I hugged my knees to my chest in the tub. Even though I, too, was restraining myself, I really wanted to reach out and touch her with just a slight extension of my hand or leg. Birdsong floated over to us, a distraction I focused on to clear my mind. "You're not asking, are you?" Helen murmured quietly, her words taking me by surprise. She touched her scar again, making me realize she was referring to it. "If you don't want to talk about it, I won't insist." Everyone has something they want to keep hidden. But whether or not you have a scar, you are still Helen to me. You always brighten up those around you. The woman I admire, I reassured her. Really? Helen's face flushed a gentle shade of red. Her eyes were slightly moist. I think I'm going to get out now. Make sure you get out before you overheat, I said gently before leaving the jacuzzi deck. After drying off and changing into a roomwear, I peeked at Helen through the window. She was looking down, her shoulders shaking. Quietly, I moved away from the spot. After enjoying the outdoor jacuzzi, we explored the relaxation room provided by the hotel, wandered around local souvenir shops, and checked out tourist spots. Helen seemed refreshed, taking photos and talking to shopkeepers. Before 7 p.m., we returned to our room and enjoyed a lavish dinner. All of these experiences were compiled into a report, and I closed my laptop. That marked the end of today's work. Good work today, Mark. Here, Helen offered, handing me a bottle of the region's specialty red wine. Tasting it, I savored its sharp flavor. For a while, we enjoyed the sake, pairing it with the snacks we bought from a souvenir shop. Although we didn't talk much, the atmosphere was warm and comfortable. Why did you leave your previous job? You were at a trading company, right? You're good at your job, Helen asked, her face slightly flushed from the alcohol. Feeling a bit tipsy and in a good mood, I decided to share a story I usually kept to myself, especially since Helen was the one asking. My brother had joined a company before me. We were close, so I wanted to help him and joined the same place. But, as it turned out, I was better at the job than he was. The CEO favored me, which my brother didn't take well. Using his position as my superior, he started harassing me, increasing my workload or blaming his mistakes on me. I thought he would return to his usual, kind self once he got over it, so I didn't let others notice the harassment. But the stress got to me, and I fell right before an important deal. My brother told the CEO I was neglecting my duties, and I was pressured into resigning, I explained, taking a sip of red wine that now tasted bitter. I haven't seen my brother since I left the job. I'm scared to meet him. Even those who seem happy might be carrying some scars. That incident made me think that way. I've never shared this story with anyone but you, Helen. Helen looked at me with a sad expression. The collar of her roomwear slightly revealed her scar, which she gently touched. Since you shared your secret, I guess I should share mine too, she said. You don't have to if you're uncomfortable, I interjected. Helen shook her head, her expression filled with determination. She seems completely recovered from drunkenness. This scar is from an accident, a car accident. My parents loved traveling, which led them to start this company. When I was 12, we were on our way to a resort trip when a truck, whose driver had dozed off, crashed into us and my mother. She clenched her scar tightly, her body shaking slightly even from a distance. The accident not only left a physical scar but also deeply wounded her soul. That's why she turned pale in the car. She was reminded of the accident. After that, I became terrified of traveling. I intended to work elsewhere, but nothing worked out, so I ended up at my father's company. He made sure I only had indoor duties to spare me from going out, which, of course, led to some negative talk among the employees. You might have heard it too, she said with a self-deprecating smile. The daughter of a travel company who can't travel, holding a good position thanks to her father, never going on side visits. I knew I couldn't go on like that, but I couldn't take that first step. Then you saved me, Mark. I thought if anyone could gently guide me to take that step, it would be you. I was really scared to come here, but you made it passable. So I chose you as my partner for this job. And thanks to you, I was able to take that step, she concluded. Her words uplifted me, but noticing her furrowed brows, my mood deflated. Because of this scar, whenever someone saw it, especially men, they treated me differently, even those who said they liked me. But you were different, Mark. You're the first man who treated me kindly even after seeing my scar. Helen looked at me with hopeful eyes. Her cheeks flushed. My heart raced again. But to you, being kind is just your nature, isn't it? I'm not special to you, she said, tears starting to fall. I take a breath. I slowly move closer to her. She responds by wiping her tears but not showing any signs of refusal. I gently hold her fists. Helen looked up me, and I kissed her cheek as if to scoop away her tears. That's not true. You are very special to me, Helen. That's why I want to be specially kind to you and cherish you. Tears overflowed from Helen's eyes like a dam breaking. I gently pulled her head to my chest and stroked her as if to soothe her. Then, she grabbed my roomwear like she was clinging to it and cried like a child. We left the hotel before noon. Take care on your way back, said the GM, to whom we expressed our gratitude before getting into the car. Helen, just like on the way there, grabbed the hem of my shirt. But this time it felt different, not driven by anxiety. Mark, hurry up and undress too. We can fully experience the couple's plan unless we go together. The silence in the car continued for a while, but it wasn't a bad kind of silence. Driving safely, I navigated the car back home. We were on the way to that hotel when my mom passed away. Helen suddenly shared. What? I almost turned to look at her but stopped myself in time. I heard her softly chuckle beside me. That's why this route was full of memories I'd rather forget. But thanks to you, Mark, they've been overridden with good ones. Thank you, truly. I glanced at her to see a smile warming her flushed cheeks. Suppressing the urge to hug her, I replied, no, thank you. It was a fun trip. On the Tuesday following our day off on Monday, my colleagues crowded around me as soon as I got to work. Hey, how was the trip with Helen? Got any photos? They asked, pushing for details. I managed a wry smile in response and was about to engage with them further when Helen called me over. Escaping from the crowd, I found Helen trying to suppress a laugh. Tough morning, huh? Guess whose fault that is? What's up, though? I asked. Well, I'm about to go report to Dad, the CEO, about the trip, but I'm a bit scared to go alone. Will you come with me? Helen asked, lightly holding my hand. Of course, I nodded in agreement. Upon our arrival, the CEO looked a bit surprised to see us together, but soon directed a look of concern at Helen. Helen, I heard you went on the tour plan scouting trip. Was everything all right? He inquired. This is the report. As Helen handed over the report, after flipping through the pages, Dad, sir, I did it. I can do the field work now. You don't have to worry about me anymore. Seeing Kyle's eyes moisten, he stood and hugged Helen tightly. You've done well, Helen. I didn't realize how much you've grown and were ready to move forward. I was too protective. I'm sorry. Helen shook her head in response. Letting go of Helen, the CEO then approached me, gripping my hand firmly. It's thanks to you, Mark, that Helen could overcome her trauma. I can't thank you enough for saving her life and for everything else you've done. It's not me, I replied. Helen worked hard to move forward herself. You're a good man, Mark. I feel I can entrust Helen to you. Maybe you should even consider taking over the company someday, the CEO mused. Dad, stop rushing things, Helen exclaimed, her face turning even redder as she playfully hit her father. Laughter filled the room, and I felt an overwhelming sense of happiness. It reminded me that I, too, needed to take a step forward. On Saturday, I headed alone to my brother's place. He lived in a condo near our old company, living solo, but the intercom at his remembered apartment number got no response. As I was puzzling over this, a resident approached, so I stepped aside. Excuse me, I thought a guy named Harry lived in 606. I ventured. Shockingly, I was told that room was now vacant. He moved out about a month ago. Don't know where to, the resident shared. Thanking them, I called home. Sure enough, my parents said my brother was there. I drove to our parents' house, which I can reach in 30 minutes by the highway. After brief greetings, I found myself at my brother's firmly shut room. He was forced to resign by the CEO after his misdeeds of shifting his mistakes onto subordinates were discovered. He's hardly come out since, my mom said, worried. Dismissing her, I called, Harry. No response, but I felt he was there. Harry, I'm working at Eagle Travel Agency now. It's exactly what it sounds like, a travel agency. My previous job experience is proving very useful. Plus, I've met a woman I want to cherish for life. Things are going great for me. Silence was all I got back, but I kept talking. What you did hurt me badly, but I want to move forward. That's why I'm here. If you feel any remorse, please open the door. Let's talk, to move forward. Still no response. I waited patiently for him to open the door. Eventually, the sound of rustling clothes. Then slowly, the door opened. My brother, looking worn out, appeared. Our eyes met, and he collapsed. "Mark, I'm sorry. Envy of you being favored by the CEO made me act horribly towards you. I couldn't stand the comparisons, and my small harassments escalated. Yet, you never spoke ill of me after leaving. I don't expect forgiveness, but if it helps you, I'll apologize as many times as necessary. Let's talk. Despite being a terrible brother, I still want to be yours, like we used to be." His tearful plea gripped my heart. "Harry, your apology is enough. Let's talk more, like old times," I suggested, and he invited me into his room, nodding through his tears. Half a year later, with Helen in the passenger seat, I drive safely. "My brother found a job," I shared. "That's wonderful." Helen's joy felt like her own. "That's made me happy. We are there." Just as Helen said, the inn we were looking for appeared in front of us. The spacious parking lot made it easy to park the car without any trouble. We arrived at our destination, a well-located inn, for our next couples tour plan review. These reviews with Helen had become routine. Since launching the Hotel Spring Rain plan, Eagle Travel Plans Are Great became the talk, leading to growth for our once small company. Stepping out of the car, the sea's scent hit us. The subject inn is located near the ocean, boasted a private beach. Helen stretched widely. Then, she entwined her arm with mine. "Let's head to the private beach once we've dropped off our luggage. Of course, swimsuits are a must. Helen, remember we're here for work, so let's not get too carried away." I know. Her genuinely joyful demeanor made me smile without realizing it. Everyone carries some invisible scars. Each person's wounds are unique, so it's wrong to dismiss or belittle them outright. Accepting someone along with their scars can lead to healing, just like how she has now overcome her trauma and can enjoy traveling and even being in a swimsuit in front of others.